sometimes life really hands us lemons. And we don't think we can make lemonade because we don't have any sugar, we don't have any water, and everything is the hardest. But today's podcast guest is going to tell us different and help us change our horrible mindset about this. So listen in. We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. Welcome to this episode of Expedition to Soul. I'm Sarah, founder of the Sisters Enchanted, and I have a returning guest to our podcast today, my friend Sharon Blue. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Sharon is the background in counseling, and she's a tarot pro. She did tarot coaching with us and is also just a tarot reader extraordinaire in her own right, and wrote a book recently. So today we're going to talk about your book, The 4 F's of Self-Care. Self-Care is not a bubble bath is the official title. And you recently said something that had me like thinking, oh yes, you're going to talk more about that. I just said so many things. You're like, yes,
that's
all that.
How your brain goes. It's all good.
Okay. Firstly, you wrote a book. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's all your fault, you know.
You did this to me. Oh, that's so exciting. And it's hard to like, it's challenging to write a book, but then it's, I think, challenging to have the confidence to say that you can write a book and then put it out there and then tell people about it. So can you just, firstly, my copy of your book is in my living room, but you have your copy right next to you. So share the book for anybody watching on the video. Tell us the title. Tell us the things, like what made you want to write this book?
Okay. So the book is called Self-Care is Not a Bubble Bath, The 4 F's of Sustainable Self-Care That Works. It is a nice little short micro book. I'm super happy with how everything turned out. And there's even a little blurb from Sarah Waka on the back as well. And basically with my background in counseling, it was just so interesting because my classes were covering, theory and practice and diagnosis and like all these different things, suicide assessments and all that jazz. And all of that was super important, but every single professor for 3 years said to the students, self-care is the most important thing of all. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. But there was no self-care class. No one said, this is how you do that. This is what that means. Here's the definition of self-care. Here's how to think about it. Here's how to do it. And so it was just this thing that was always there. And then when I worked as a counselor for 7 years, I didn't have self-care for a very long time, and burnout happened and illnesses and all of that crazy. And I had to start doing my own research to figure out what is self-care and how do you implement it in a way that works and is sustainable. And so over the years, I've done a lot of research into it, and I kind of have created my own little formula for this is what self-care is. Start here, go through these steps, and then this is how you find the gaps in your practices and fill them in. And so that is basically what this book is it's a formula for self-care. And I love that it is super interactive and engaging because there's reflection moments throughout the whole book where you have to stop and ask yourself questions about your personal opinions on self-care, what you think you do for self-care, what you have been told self-care is versus what self-care really is. So there's a lot of self-reflection and discovery within the book as well. So it was super fun to write because I've been talking about this stuff and doing it and practicing it for years. So it wasn't hard to write the actual technical part of it. The hard part was, how do I make this interesting and not boring for other people. So I'd like find little stories and humor and jokes and stuff and throw that in.
Yeah. So this is turning into just like a podcast about your book and writing the book, which is fine by me. But what would you say was like, because I think that you know, we talk about a lot of the same, not even talk, like we encourage people in a lot of the same ways, like find what makes you happy, like do a lot of self-inquiry with tarot, like do the self-care, but like what is self-care? And so what am I trying to ask? When you were writing the book and trying to not make it be just like another book that people buy and don't use, was there how do you put yourself in the reader's shoes, like what am I even trying to ask here? Like, was there a part where it felt really hard and where you were like, oh my gosh, how am I I don't want this to just end up collecting dust. So how do I put myself in there and change it to make it a really useful tool?
Yeah, I think that's why I added the reflection questions, because it was so very, here's info, let me throw it in your face. And there's a lot of books there that are just, here's info, let me throw it at your face. And that's not super helpful. And I wanted this to be a book that you're not going to just read once. You're going to keep it on hand as a reference tool and a resource. And you can go back to these questions as often as you want. Self-care is not, that's why I wrote sustainable self-care.
Yeah.
Your self-care routine and practices are going to change over the course of your lifetime. Like my self-care in my 20s was hangover remedies and learning, how to pull all-nighters without it affecting me the next day. Like that was my, like, hydrate, take your Tylenol before you go to bed. Like that was self-care in my 20s. Self-care in my 30s looks very, very different when I have 2 kids. And it's like, I need to not stay up until 11:30 at night scrolling Facebook just because I can. Like, I need
who's the grown up here?
Right. Because these kids are going to be in my room at 5 a.m. waking me up. So I need to get sleep. So like as your self-care is changing and evolving, I wanted the book to be a tool that you can use throughout all of those evolutions, so that it can just stay that kind of tried and true, go back through the steps and just repeat the steps.
Yeah. So good. Love it. I'm really proud of you for doing it and taking the leap, getting it done.
It's not easy. I decided, so like basically I've had this idea in my head and I've wanted to write a book similar to this for past couple of years. But I was always like, this is a 3 to 5 years down the road project because it's going to take so much time and energy. And I don't have that right now. And then Sarah slid into my DMs and was like, hey, here's this really cool program where you can work with this coach who will help you to write this book that you've had in your head for forever. And so my Christmas present to myself was that class.
Yeah. Listen, don't put yourself in direct like space with me if you don't want to do something. Like if you prefer to stay how you are, it's best not to like become close to me, because I'll be like, so now is the time.
But I love it though, because I wouldn't have Blue Empress Tarot without Sisters Enchanted. I wouldn't have this book. Like there's so much I wouldn't have without being pushed. I'm a Cancer. I like to crawl into my shell, stay nice and comfy and cozy and not put myself out there. And so I need that Sagittarius pushing.
I'm here for it. So what I was talking to you about recently that was not directly about your book, but I think can tie into the conversation, is you said the words obstacles as opportunities in a sentence to me. And I think that, this ties into your book because I was writing a book at the same time and I saw you sharing and getting feedback and like getting over the obstacle of making it not sound academic or not sound like just what but like how do you make it relate to other people? And I think that in those times we have those choices. Is it an obstacle and we just say, well, I just can't do this, it's not for me? Or is it an opportunity to figure something out? And I saw you use it as an opportunity to grow as a writer and as a storyteller and thinking in a new way. And but I think most of the time in our daily lives, we come to little obstacles that we just are like, oh, that's an obstacle, I'm gonna go sit back down now. So can you give me some whys? What were you thinking? What does this look like for you? Obstacles as opportunities.
Well, so this phrase kept coming up. I do a lot of vendor events with tarot readings, and I was doing a 3-day vendor event here in St. Louis. And so I did 61 readings in 3 days. And this phrase kept coming up during these readings where I kept getting these cards, and it was like people kept seeing things that were going wrong. You know, I kept getting the 10 of swords for people. Basically. And so it was like, here's these people who have been through, you know, so many obstacles being thrown at them. And yet the point of that 10 of swords is the bad stuff is over. The swords are your perception and how you look at things, not how things actually are. And so how can you choose to overcome seeing things as swords in your back and instead see them as, hey, new weapon. And so like this phrase, how can we see opportunities instead of seeing obstacles, just kept coming up as a way to kind of push people to shift their perspective. And I think it definitely relates to how I wrote the book for sure, because I never have considered myself a writer. I had a college professor for writing 101. That was part of my requirement for my English major. And part of that class was we had to write millions and millions and millions of papers, fiction, nonfiction, everything. And then he would sit with a recorder and record the feedback, criticism for an hour. And then you had to sit and listen to it and then try and do better. And so I had all these cassettes of this guy just saying, you will never be a writer. You are horrible. This is awful. And so that was like, you know, 4 months of my college life was just this guy's voice telling me you will never be a writer. And so even though I wanted to write this book, that was one of my obstacles, was being told I'm not a writer. It's just not what I am. And I was kind of like, that's fine. I'm a counselor. I'm a reader. I'm a healer, helper, whatever. It's fine. And so instead of seeing that preconception of this is something I can't do or I'm not capable of doing, I was like, well, what I am good at doing is teaching. I can teach. As a school counselor, so many classroom guidance lessons. So it's like, I can tell a story that helps someone see things in a different way. I did that all the time with my students, because I could never just tell them this is what you need to do. I had to say, it's kind of like this. And I had to create an analogy in order for them to be like, oh, okay. And then it would click. So I always had to find a different way to put it. And so that was kind of my opportunity was, well, this is a thing I can do. So instead of seeing this as an obstacle, just see, I can do this. How can I do this in order to overcome that obstacle and write the book? But I think you're right. So often people see the things they can't do as insurmountable. And I think instead being able to look at the things you can do, or how can we see, you know, especially with things that go wrong, like plans and things like that.
Yeah.
When things go wrong, how can you see, how is this helping me versus how is this hindering me?
So true. It's such a, I think, important mindset shift. And people that I know who are doing things in their lives that others look at and are like, well, I would have no idea how to do that. It's because they just had an obstacle and then found the opportunity in it, rather than like, really, like, nobody knows anything.
No one knows anything. Well, and it's funny too, because so like my husband, I use him as an example in this because he's a tech guy. Like that's his background, is tech, computer programming, development, IT. That's his shtick. But we wanted to finish the basement because we have our third child on the way. And so we needed more space. And he was like, well, there's no way we're going to be able to afford to pay someone to come and put in a bathroom and a bedroom and kitchen and living area. Like that's beyond us at this moment in time when we have a 9-month time frame. And so he went on YouTube and taught himself how to do everything. So instead of seeing here's an obstacle, it's just not going to happen. How do we now squeeze 3 kids into what house we have?
Yeah.
It was, okay, well, what can I do? And he knows he can learn. He can receive information and figure it out, trial and error. So here he is, and he has done all the plumbing, all of the electric, all the framing, all of the insulation, drywall, mudding, taping, painting, flooring, like everything, bathroom installed, like he's done it all. And it's like, I just look at him and I'm like, that's crazy. That is crazy that we're just like, this is a problem. We can't afford this. What do we do? And instead of just seeing the obstacle, he was like, well, I can learn stuff. Let's
yeah. That's it's so true. I think it's like that with, I see that a lot with people who want to start a business of some kind. And then they tell me like, they're not techie or something. And I'm like, what? Earth makes you think I was techie. I'm techie now, 7 years later.
Exactly.
7 years ago, I was just like you, fumbling through the woods. And just like your husband, who next time he'll be the one a friend calls when the bathroom
is now. He already is. He's handyman on call now for all of our friends. But like, again, it's that opportunity versus obstacle. It's instead of seeing the detour that has been thrown down in front of you, how can we look at that detour, but then look back at ourselves and ask ourselves, well, what am I good at? What do I know to be true about myself? Where do I excel? What strengths do I have? And then how can I use those to forge ahead in a different way and still achieve what I want to achieve?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. And then also make sure you have your self-care on point. So that after you do the hard thing, you have some nice foundations of self-care to
100%
fall back on. Yeah.
100%. And again, that all goes back to mindset.
Yes, that's true. Always delightful to have you on the podcast, Sharon. Your book, Self-Care is Not a Bubble Bath by Sharon Blue, can be found. You can go get it on Amazon and it'll ship to you post haste.
Yes. It's available in ebook as well as paperback.
Yeah. Listen, if y'all get a copy, and I need to do this too, make sure you go back on Amazon and leave a rave review for Sharon. Because as a small business owner, those little things, they are so helpful. It's silly. Like you might think that, oh, it's just a review, somebody else will do it. No, it is like the see something, say something of small business. If you see your small business friend doing something awesome, you say something, because those things help so much. So I'm going to make sure that I hold myself to that, and grab your book and then head back to Amazon and leave a glorious review for Sharon, so that other people see it and know that she's the real deal and that they can trust the source, and they take a chance on themselves and get the book also, and spread the ripple far and wide. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Self-Care is Not a Bubble Bath by Sharon Blue. Grab your copy. You can find Sharon at Blue Empress Tarot on all of the places that you would look for a person, the socials, and her website, Blue Empress Tarot. Sharon's hanging around in all of our community groups. And so come and say hi if you see her around there too. But
yes, I'm around.
All right. Did I leave anything off? I don't think I did. Where to find you, your book.
I think you got everything. All the
places.
Think
we're good. Check. All right, Sharon. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Taking the time, and yes,
always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right, y'all. Check out Sharon online. And you can follow us at the Sisters Enchanted all over social and email and all the places, and find out what we are cooking up right now. I think as of the time that you hear this, we have our free journaling class coming up, which is a great companion to Sharon's book. So grab the book, join the journaling class, and Sharon and I together are we're going to spin you around, and you're going to turn around a whole different, your mind is going to be entirely different by the end of that. That's a good way to spend a week in May. So you can find the links for all these wherever you look for links, all the stuff. Thank you again for listening in. And until next time, we hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If you liked this episode of the Expedition to Soul podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it will really help us spread everyday magic, intention, and intuition to the masses and helps us so much as a small business. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. There are new episodes every Tuesday and astro forecasts for the week ahead every Friday. If there's any topics you'd want to hear, anything you want us to dive deeper into, shoot us an email at magic@thesistersenchanted.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening and being part of the community here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we'll see you in the next episode.